adjustments?
Yes, I have one in the board packet. Kelly Seeley had provided a memo regarding the revenue and expense report and had a couple options for us to consider, so I'd just like to add a number 5 under deliberatives, and then we can discuss those. I'm going to do it when I do the presentation on revenue and expenses, and then I'll cover it again when we get to deliberations.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that the agenda be adjusted as requested by Superintendent Corey. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Excellent.
Okay, so 3-0.
And then I have a retirement.
Okay,
Okay. Dear Superintendent Corey, I have decided to retire from my position as principal of Captain Samuel Douglas Academy at the end of the next academic year, effective June 30th, 2025. This decision has been made after careful thought, and I believe it is in my best interest to pursue opportunities that will allow me to devote more time to my family. I am incredibly grateful for the experiences and opportunities for professional development I have acquired during my tenure in the Brookline School District, and for the chance to work alongside the dedicated teachers, staff, students, and administrators within SAU 41. I am proud of the progress we have accomplished together and look forward to continuing that growth over the next year. As we move forward into the 24-25 academic year, I will prepare to assist in a seamless transition with my successor and offer any support once the individual is named. I want to express my gratitude for the support, guidance, and collegiality provided to me over the years. I will treasure the time spent working in such a wonderful community dedicated to providing an exceptional education to its students. And that's from Patricia Boulay. And I would just like to express that I'm excited for Tricia, but at the same time, I'm very sad for us. And I wish her nothing but the best. And I also want to express my gratitude by providing this letter early, because Tricia understands what the hiring market is going to be like. So being able to go out early, because we'll be searching for an assistant superintendent, and we'll be searching for a principal, and whatever else might come up. So with regrets, I need a motion from the board to accept that retirement for June 30th of 2025.
I make a motion to accept Tricia's retirement as of June 30th, 2025. Sorry.
that's okay.
Patricia Boulay. Apologize.
And I'll second that. Any discussion? I just want to say thank you you came in during a very difficult time, and I appreciate all the work you've done, and I wish you all the best as you move forward. Thank you for all your hard work.
I echo the sentiment. Thank you for everything. Also, thank you for the incredibly advanced notice, and I really respect that, and thank you for that, to give us the opportunity to fill some shoes. So thank you.
Yeah, and I obviously it's a very difficult decision, but I did think it was important to give that notification, and
Appreciate it.
I definitely want to make sure that this year is as seamless as possible at the end for any transition that's possible to happen earlier in the year.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, we will, all in favor of accepting the retirement of Patricia Boulay? Thank you.
Thank you. And that's it for resignations, nominations, and correspondence.
Alrighty. So we're moving on to approval of minutes. So it looks like the following amendments were offered. Page 5, line 17, replace amount with about. Page 12, line 43, insert to between students and learn. And so I'll make a motion to accept those changes as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, so we're all set with that. And then the other, it looks like non-public minutes?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented with no changes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? It's 3-0. Okay. Now it looks like we're gonna move on to discussion of the suicide prevention plan.
Yeah.
All right,
So you'll see in your packet, there's an updated version of the suicide prevention plan. At the last meeting that we had, one of the board members, had asked for some clarification and had some questions. So we actually did meet, and we went through the plan page by page, and some of the pieces that you'll see that are slightly different, there's no major changes made to the plan. There's some pieces in bold that you'll see on page 3. That it was kind of decided that some of these pieces needed to be emphasized, in regard to making sure the staff understands that they don't have any personal responsibility to assess, to do any sort of risk assessment for students, and that, we are really looking to have thoughtful conversations and send students out to be seen, to be assessed by outside clinicians. So there are some components throughout here where that is just more expressly stated. And there were some pieces where we spelled out what ACCESS stands for, which is the Acute Community Crisis Evaluation Service System. So that's spelled out on the 2 pages that exists. And there's really not a lot of substantive changes besides those. So I'm happy to take any questions. This is a second review, or any thoughts, and then we'd be voting on this later in the deliberated section.
I like the changes. They're very clear about what's your responsibility and what's not your responsibility, and bringing it straight to administration. I don't know if that was there prior or if that was not, but I think it's just, in these situations, just helpful to, especially with a bunch of new staff, to be very explicit.
Yes.
So I appreciate those.
Yes. Oh, the other piece, I'm sorry, on page 1 where we note that right now we use either NAMI or the vector training, we also did put in with the discretion to explore other options that meet the criteria of the RSA, because in case a new resource or tool comes out that would be better than the vector, or we just wanted to have that flexibility. So having that in there as well. That was the other, I won't say major change, but more of a change. And yes, and the pieces with the administration was always in there. This just kind of makes it stand out a little bit more.
Emphasizing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. And you had worked with Johanna on this a little bit
Yes,
behind the
yeah.
scenes.
We
Okay,
met,
great.
we went through
Okay.
all the
Great.
pages.
All right, any questions about that or thoughts? Okay. All right, we can move on to the data governance plan.
Okay. In your board packet, you have an updated data governance plan. It does not need board action. It just needs to be presented to the board. The major changes are really quite small. We changed from referring to the district to changing that to SAU 41 because it's a governance plan for the entire SAU. We made some corrections on title changes. We used to be the Director of Technology, is now the Network Compliance, and a variety of different other things. We also updated some of the policies listed in it, and each of those is in a strikeout or underlined, so you can see all the changes. We're not expecting you to read through this tonight, but you can have it at your leisure. And we can take time in July if there were any questions about it. But the law simply requires us to continually update it and to present it to the board and then publish it on the websites. So that will be done. I believe it's being also being presented tonight at the co-op district. It has gone to the Hollis district and therefore will be posted shortly. The data governance team meets every Thursday for an hour. They review any request from staff about technology they would like to incorporate into their classroom so that it can be vetted, and then it's approved. And that does two things. One, it allows us to stay in compliance with the RSA, but more importantly, it allows our tech department to know that we have the capabilities on those computers to run that software that a teacher might be looking for. So that is the update on the data governance plan. And again, if you have time over the next month, feel free to review it, and we'll put any questions, a quick little agenda item in July.
Thank you. Any thoughts? No? All right, so the next thing on the agenda is a date for the July meeting.
Correct. I have two suggestions. The 24th is our normal fourth Wednesday of the month, and the 31st is the fifth Wednesday of the month. I didn't know if you wanted to be closer to the school year beginning or maintain that fourth week. Here at 6 o'clock.
I'm not available the 24th.
I am not available the 24th either.
I'm not available on the 31st, but if we want to
Sweet.
go ahead on the 24th, or,
I think we need to make sure that we'd have enough.
we're gonna have to make sure we have a quorum. Yeah.
Yes, so
I'm not even entirely sure I'm available on the 24th. July's rough for, not
Agreed.
rough, it's great, but.
Yep.
agreed.
So, maybe,
Well,
can we, communicate about that behind the scenes, just for date purposes?
What I was gonna say, with the board's permission, I'll email the entire board,
Okay,
give those two choices. If those are both a no, that's fine. We may just have to move off our Wednesday or just to a different week. Hollis is the first week of August, but August is another 5-week month,
yeah,
so we could look at a different day potentially and double up in August.
okay,
So I will take that responsibility of sending out that email and seeing who can do what dates,
thank
because
you.
I know July is very difficult.
Perfect, thank you. All right, and then the revenue and expense update?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, in your board packet, we are showing a balance of $132,650. We still have $2,220,654 encumbered to pay all the end of the year bills. Some of that is supplies to end the year, different things that were ordered and encumbered just haven't been sent out. Some of that is also just special ed costs. So we are looking at that, and when we take that total balance, we also are moving $59,529 to food service to balance that. That's just an accounting transaction. So that will give us a total revenue balance of $85,286, which will give us an unreserved fund balance of $158,407. We'll be discussing and voting on tonight a maintenance trust that was approved by the voters of $156,000, which gives us $2,407 for a retained fund balance. Now, obviously, we don't want to be that short, but there are two pieces still going on. With $2,220,654, there'll obviously be some expenses that will be reduced because the business office budgets off a worst-case scenario. The second piece is a number of the expenses that we incurred over and above the budget were based on increases in special education costs that couldn't be anticipated. So Kelly provided two recommendations on her memo. The first one, as we close encumbrances, final invoices could adjust and our balance could jump. And we saw that last year. We were about, probably in this circumstance, maybe a little worse off last year, and finished the year giving $20,000 back to the taxpayers and still funding our unreserved fund balance. But to make things safe, Kelly is recommending that we take a motion tonight, just that we could expend funds from the special education fund, which would allow us to have an up to number, and then we would be able to use those funds if the need should arise. Obviously, it's a trust fund, so we would do a public hearing on that when we had a final number. So what you're really doing is just providing yourself a cushion, and that's why we added that to the deliberative item number 5. I'd be happy to take any questions. I look at it as a very positive report, only because back when we were in September and October, if you recall, we had to freeze the budget because of move-ins and different things that had come up. And now we are pretty much on stable footing to finish the year in the black and just determine what we have for an unreserved fund balance. I don't necessarily want to enter next fall with no unreserved fund balance, because if we saw an enrollment spike at a specific grade, we may need a teacher, and that's not currently budgeted for.
Andy,
Yep.
I guess I wasn't aware that we had a food service unreserved fund balance. Can you tell me about that?
Well, the food service is more of an accounting transfer, because when the money comes in, it has to go back to the food service line. So at this time of year, we're always just doing that accounting transaction. So it's not a food service unreserved fund. They don't have a balance. It's just the transfer to make that zero out.
Okay, so that says for food service sales, that revenue is 47,613.
Correct.
So where does 59,529 come from?
Oh, let me just see. Let me see. Revenue. Off the top of my head, I'm gonna have to get back to you, because I should know where it is, but it's escaping me right now. I may have it before the end of the meeting.
Okay. And I just wonder, for clarity for the taxpayers, if we should not call that an unreserved fund balance when it's really a line item transfer.
Okay?
I mean, I'm not an accountant, so I don't know what it would be called, but.
I will check with Kelly and see if we can put a better title on it.
Okay. I just recall last year at
Yep.
district meeting, or the deliberative session, the question of how many unreserved fund balances or trust funds we had came up, so I just want to make sure
Okay.
we're transparent about that.
Okay. So I'll get back to you on that question, Kelly.
Thank you.
And you wanted a motion to allow funds to be expended from the special education trust fund? What was the motion you were looking for?
During deliberations,
Yeah, or do you want to wait on that?
we can wait, but I
Okay.
can give you the example of the motion just so you can think it through.
Okay,
To see what action the board will take regarding the business administrator's recommendation to transfer up to $140,000 from the special education trust to keep the reserve fund balance whole.
okay,
Okay?
yep,
That's what we would be adding.
okay. All right, any other questions or thoughts? All right, so at this time, I'm gonna make a motion that the board recess until the conclusion of the public hearings on the Brookline School District Maintenance Expendable Trust and the Department of Education Literacy Grant. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, great.
Okay. Let me just find my notes.
So we recessed at, if we're taking notes, what time is it?
6:18.
Okay.
Okay. As you know, last month, we informed you that we had been awarded approximately $65,000 worth of literacy grants, and the board took a motion to accept the funds. The reason for the public hearing is to give the taxpayers notice so that we can expend the funds. Okay? So that's the purpose of this, so just to run through it. The new Hampshire Department of Education, Division of Learner Support, created a competitive grant entitled Learning into Literacy 2 Initiative. The New Hampshire Department of Education Learning into Literacy 2 grant must ensure the implementations of evidence-based literacy resources and a comprehensive reading program at the Tier 1 instructional level. And Tier 1 means the instruction that all students receive in the classroom. Grants were awarded to New Hampshire public and public charter schools to fund science of reading, evidence-based literacy curriculum, materials, and professional development for the support of students in K to 6. The funding source, the grant is funded by the American Rescue Plan Act Emergency Assistance. And Richard Mahaki Memorial School was awarded $42,519.87. And Captain Samuel Douglas Academy was awarded $23,223.10. So we can open it up for public comment with the chair's permission.
Sure. I will open the floor for public input at 6:21 PM. Is there any input? Okay, I'm gonna ask, I'll do what Ken did. So I ask for any testimony in opposition. Any testimony for the second time in favor? And then one more time, any testimony in opposition? And since it's clear there's no one here that is in favor or opposed, we'll just leave it at that. So we'll close the public hearing. Oh, actually, we have to,
We'll close this one and open the one for the expendable trust.
okay, so we'll close this at 6:22 PM. Although that clock's off of my computer.
Yep.
Is it okay that the expendable trust one is earlier? Supposed to be earlier?
It's okay because the way they were posted in the paper was that way.
Okay, all right. perfect. Okay. So now we'll open the hearing for the expendable, or the school building maintenance expendable trust fund.
In your board packet, our business administrator had provided you some information. First of all, the Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust, a little bit about the background. Principals Dan Molinari and Tricia Boulay identified several needed repairs and improvements for their respective buildings during the budget process. At the hearing for the FY25 budget, the Brookline School Board recommended the funding source for these particular items be the Brookline School Maintenance Expendable Trust. The voters approved the board's recommendation during the 2024 voting session. Therefore, this is the official request to use the expendable trust for the following expenses. And these were all the expenses that were outlined for the voters. At RMS, Intercom Bell's phone system Phase 1, $45,000. Kitchen area roof replacement, $31,000. Exterior cameras, we had an area where we felt we wanted to enhance coverage, so that's $7,000. So at RMMS, there's a total of $83,000. At CSDA, we have main office flooring for $4,000. We have our exterior doors, Phase 2, for $10,000. And our panic burglar replacement at $15,000, for a total of $29,000 at CSDA. When we combine the request at RMMS and CSDA, we have a grand total of $112,000. The current balance of the trust is $30,879. We are adding $156,000 as approved in the FY25 budget process. We will have FY25 expenditures that I just outlined of $112,000, which will give us a resulting balance of $74,879 that is available should something come up during the school year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust.
Any questions? No questions? Okay.
So we can take-
All right, so I'll open the floor for public comment at 6:23 p.m. Is there any testimony in favor? Any testimony in opposition? And I'll ask once again if there's any testimony in favor or any testimony in opposition. So seeing none, we can close the public hearing at 6:23 p.m. Still.
And next, we're running ahead of schedule, which is never a bad thing. I can turn it over to Dan and Tricia for their end-of-year presentation, and Megan Lauren will also be there to assist if need be.
Okay, good evening. We're going to start with the principal's report. Our enrollment stayed pretty stable throughout the year. We ended the year at 582 students. And Mrs. Blade, do you want to share May events?
Oh, sure, actually, just use yours. Thank you. So at CSDA, we do have some pictures in the packet. We had the Memorial Day program, which was well attended. The students came, and several parents were able to make it this year, and it was really a wonderful ceremony. And I think the students really enjoyed understanding a little bit more about why we hold Memorial Day services throughout the various communities across the country. And we also had our the high school came over with their theater presentation to the 6th grade students to really give them an idea of what the theater also that they can take part in middle school as well. So they liked that. And we also had our spring concert, which was really well attended by the families and various community members.
And then in June for RMS, our 3rd grade students visited CSDA and did a trail visit to the CSDA Woods, and all 5 third grade classrooms went. We had a nice walk through the woods to explore CSDA. The students got to walk the hallways of CSDA so they can see where they're going to be heading for next year. They also got to meet Mrs. Boulay in the cafeteria. So that was a nice visit, and we wanted to thank CSDA for having us that day. It was beautiful weather. The students had a great time, and that was our second year of doing that trip. A few days later, grade 3 was busy again with a wax museum, so we invited families to come in to view their notable people research project that they did in the gymnasium, and the students did a phenomenal job with their writing, their research, and also dressing up as their notable people. So really well done by our third graders and our teachers. And June 10th, we had our June 11th, we had a grade 3 concert. Want to thank Mr. Kopczynski for his work on that performance, along with the students. They sang beautifully, and we rounded out that night with a nice end of the year slideshow that showcased their time at RMS these last few years. Last week, June 10th and the 11th, we had kindergarten screening, and something that we did differently this year than we hadn't done in previous years is we invited all the kindergarten students on those 2 days, and we separated them into small classes, and they were here for 2.5 hours, and it was really well done. Mrs. Everett, our kindergarten teacher, along with Mrs. Ogier, they set up like a half-day classroom for the students to explore what a morning meeting is like. They had snack time, they had some center-based instruction, while students were pulled one-on-one to meet with our interventionists and specialists so that we can get to know these students. And I felt like that was probably one of the most valuable days we've had with our kindergarten screen, because we learned a lot from the students, and they did great. They did amazing, but it also will ease any anxiety they have coming into the school year next year. So I think it was a nice approach that we're going to keep going forward, and a lot of good feedback from the families. And then last Wednesday, kindergarten went to Friendly Farm, had a great visit there. And last Friday we had field day, and we had our RMS assembly yesterday, where we did the end of the school year slideshow. We recognized all of our departing staff and sang some songs, and also recognized all of our third graders with their wave and walk out the gymnasium. So we found a good last few weeks of school.
Excellent.
And then at CSDA, a big event for the grade 6. Obviously, June is a big month for the 6th graders, but we went to the Brown Center, and I was able to attend this year, and Mrs. Peterson came in the afternoon as well. And first of all, the day was so spectacular, which has really made the difference. But it was amazing to see all the counselors and the interaction and rapport that they were able to build very quickly with these students. But also, these were the same counselors that were here when they came to visit the school at CSDA in the fall. So it was a nice connection. They did various team building and trust building activities, and then they were able to do some climbing. And it was really wonderful to see the students supporting one another and cheering. Some people said, you know, I'm a little afraid of heights, but they were cheered on regardless of how high or how low they actually climbed. So it was really a positive event. And when I spoke with the students and the teachers the next day even, the kids were saying it was really a wonderful way to end the school year. We also had field day on the 13th, and also then 6th grade on the 13th went up. They had a step up in the afternoon after field day. They went to the middle school, and they were able to have their lunch there. They really got a feel for what middle school will be like when they, at the end of August, when they attend. And again, I think that just lowers the level of anxiety. And they got to meet some of the teachers and hear about what their schedules will look like. And a culmination for the entire school was our grade 6 promotion Monday evening. Again, a wonderful evening as far as weather before all this heat wave rolled in. And I got more emails that evening and the next day from parents, and just thanking all of the staff, the custodial staff, the office staff, and the grade 6 teachers, and everyone in the building that took part to make it such a wonderful ceremony, but more importantly, a culmination of the 3 years at CSDA. And I think the students did a phenomenal job. And we also, Mr. Molinari and I had put in quite a few pictures here, so I hope you'll look at the pictures and kind of see the various activities that the students did in all of these events, particularly at the Brown Center. Just kind of gives you an idea of the climbing and activities that they took part in.
And just one last thing I want to highlight from those pictures. We had an Eagle Scout named Antonio Stevens, who, this wasn't a school project, but he did it for the community, so I want to recognize him because our teachers have gone on field trips to Pout Pond, which is by Cider Mill area, and he put out signs to highlight the ecology around that area. So if you ever have a time to visit the Cider Mill trails, he did a wonderful job. I believe he put up 8 signs around that area, so a really nice job. And thank you, Antonio, for improving and enhancing our Brookline woods.
Thank you.
And now we will go to our year in review. Everybody like the slide? So this looks similar to the beginning of the year slide. Our first slide is to cover our goal. So in the fall, we shared that our first goal for our Brookline School District was to continue monitoring our physical assets in Brookline, our infrastructure, our building and safety codes, just to provide a safe and optimal learning environment for our students and staff. Some of the highlights this year that we were able to accomplish, I'll talk about number 2 and 3 first. Our administration board and planning board had some discussions this year in school board meetings regarding planning for Brookline's growth. As we've discussed, Brookline is, I believe, the fastest growing town right now in New Hampshire. And then we also had successful off-site evacuations at both CSD and RMS. RMS had their off-site evacuation to the fire department in October. CSD recently completed their evacuation to DECO. And then looking ahead for budgetary action steps, we are looking at furthering the discussions on lighting, controls, boilers, air handles, and AC units. And then
Yes, obviously one of the events that we want to complete this year is the construction of the CSDA playground equipment, and we've been working, I want to thank Lance Finnemore from our facilities. He's working alongside with me and with the project designer, Justin Mansfield, and we're hoping that we will have that in place by the end of July, beginning of August. When I met with the 3rd graders that came up, they were excited to hear and that they'll be one of the first groups to see, hopefully, the completion of the playground when we have an open house with them in late August before school starts. And as far as the off-site evacuation, I do want to state that we did have one on June 14th, and again, we worked with DECO Company, and they were amenable to it. And I also want to thank the Brookline Police, Fire Department, and our Homeland Security, who also were able to get other supporters to help us so that we had enough support to make sure that we could safely walk down Townsend Hill Road, and we had various police and other people supporting us. We also had one classroom this year that boarded a bus down at the DECO Company, and so then and a few staff members. And what we did is we set up the process similar to how RMMS does it, where we had 5 parent volunteers drive up, and they drove through the process. And that way the staff was able to utilize the paperwork that's in place to make sure that our forms and the procedures work. And we'll be following up a meeting on that to see if there's any concerns or anything that we should change. And the students did a wonderful job. And the day before that, actually 2 days before that, I held an assembly to let the students know, this is just a precaution, and I basically gave the example that, if we ever, for instance, lost our electricity and water source. We could only stay in school for so many hours, and that would be an example of why we may have to go off-site. So they were like, okay, this is a good thing. So it was really productive.
Can
Can I ask a
just have
question?
Oh,
sorry. I'm
You go
guessing
first.
we might have the same question. Did the students at any time go inside the property buildings of DECO?
No, we strictly used the driveway. So basically, we lined up the 12 classrooms. There was we prepared it so that they would just have an idea of where to line up, and along with their teachers, we were able to take attendance, and then they went back up to CSDA.
Okay, thank you. Because I know we had talked about it last year, I think, about the school board's concerns about DECO employees or personnel that aren't subject to background checks by the district being around our children. So I
Right.
just wanted to, I didn't.
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't-
that would only have in extreme emergency. And again, what would occur is, and I know Mrs. Gilbert, who happens to be here, we had gone through a tour, as did a few other individuals last year. They would evacuate particular areas of the facility for us to come in with our staff. And no time during any type of practice drill or real evacuation would students ever be placed in the care of others. There would always be an employee with the students. But as far as our drills are concerned, we would only do them using the driveway at this time.
Okay. Did we, I think there was an agreement or a contract or something that, a memorandum of understanding or something that we were entering into with DECO?
We still have not finalized it
Okay.
because DECA and our attorney are working through. That's why this was more of
Okay.
a opportunity to practice it. But we should hopefully have that finalized because they're more than willing to work with us. It's just trying to figure out the logistics of that.
Okay. Okay, good. I just, because it sounds like if there were an emergency where we needed to be inside of a shelter, that we would do that. And I appreciate that this was a drill and we didn't. But I just want to make sure that, like, the issue of background checks and
Yep.
people who might be on restricted lists in terms of proximity to children.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just had a a comment, and I don't know all the details, so just something to think about with communication. There was a alert that went out to parents that was entitled like "emergency is over" or something. I quite frankly, I'm used to seeing them, so I was like, that's fine.
Yeah,
But for
evacuation.
some parents that weren't aware, maybe they hadn't read a newsletter, or I don't know if there wasn't communication that there was going to be a drill. It was sort of just startling. Of course, the actual message was, so just something to think about. I don't know if maybe
Yeah.
those parents that talked about it missed something,
Yeah.
but it's always a little concerning when you get random communication about emergencies or whatever it was phrased. And again, I didn't look into it, but I'm just communicating what
Yeah.
a couple of parents were concerned
yeah, and
about.
actually what happened, communication had gone out. However, we're in the process of changing from Power School to Parent Square, and I think that's where some of the communication occurred. Because actually what happened to a few individuals, depending upon how they had emergency contacts labeled in Power School, some of their emergency contacts got the message.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I received that information, I tied in with our IT from Carol Tyler. So she was looking into that, and she was identifying where the glitch was that occurred.
Great. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. And then this just reminded me of something that's come up as a few parents questioning and maybe some misconception. If we could clear up about the playground. There were parents that were concerned that students couldn't use the soccer fields all year. And the impression they had was that it was because of an accessibility issue. I'm just wondering what that issue was, if that was true, and then is this new playground design going to alleviate those concerns so that first of all, that the playground is accessible, but that we're not, I mean, the multiple parents reported that students were forbidden from the fields, which is really the majority of the place to run around there, and only allowed in the area where the swing set is. So I don't know if we could clarify that so the board is aware of where we're
Yeah,
at.
the whole back where the playground is and the back of the school is, we do not use the soccer field though, because of accessibility issues. And that's something that's been in the budget in the previous years, and we'll be putting some things in. We're hoping to put in this year, for instance, to have it hard topped all the way, if you know where the portables are?
Yes.
If you hard top it from to the left side of the portables all the way down to the field entrance. And that would allow accessibility to the field for
Okay.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm sure there's legal reasons. I'm well aware of them why we can't, but that's something the board would want to know about, and I'm sure would approve of right away to get that done, because that, I mean, thinking back to when my son went to school there, that was where the majority of the kids played. So I can't even really, quite frankly, picture recess out there, but I know it wasn't quite as fun as it was used to, and it sounds like, you know, there's legal issues, I get it, I support accessibility for all students, but sometimes what happens when that causes other students, all students, to miss out on something, it doesn't give a good look in any way.
Yeah, and the other.
So I don't know who advised us on that, or if it is the best route, but I'd like for us to kind of shore that up, because it sounds like next year we're still gonna have the same issue. Is that true? So that whole field will not be allowed for use, so where kids play soccer or football?
Yep. Yep, but
Okay.
we have field in the back to the left of the playground area, and then behind the 5th grade wing.
Okay. Okay. I just think it's something we should explore to see how quickly we can make that accessible. First of all, because it should be accessible, but secondly, because that's a huge loss to the kids who need to get their energy out and run around. I know there's that area behind the swings,
It's
but
not quite as big.
yeah, it's
for
not
running.
quite as big. Yeah, so
And the other issue is also even coverage, staff coverage, to be, this is such a big expanse of area, to have enough support to cover all of the areas.
well, I would say that we should figure that out. The board will support whatever is needed for that, because in the past that hasn't been an issue. I mean, I only have a 7th grader going into 8th grade, so in his 6th grade year, that wasn't an issue. So I don't know if there's staff that are unwilling now to do what they were doing before, or if there's just not enough staff, but I guess that's something that maybe we should just continue to talk about, how to fix this situation for kids
So
who
was
really
it,
need to be outside and running around. We all know that's very important for mental health.
so was it not used for field day also?
Correct.
Oh wow, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You skip one. There you go.
There you go.
So our second goal was regarding MTSS, multi-tiered systems of supports, school-wide behavior expectations and routines that we reinforced throughout the year. As you may recall, back in September, we discussed how we had an MTSS committee meet over the summer. We created school-wide expectations charts that were shared at both RMS and CSDA. We also created matrices and implemented those school-wide. So really, a nice, thank you to all of our teachers that worked on that process. It was really well done, and started our year off on the right foot. This year, we continued to do our Blue Jay recognition along with CSDA's PAW Awards, and we do those weekly, recognizing students for leadership or respect or kindness, responsibility. And then our teachers this year started the year off with Turbo Tiger videos, which are really well received to start the year. We also had Turbo Tiger lessons that we implemented at various points. Plymouth State Tiger came to perform in October, school-wide at both RMS and CSDA. And I'll let Mrs. Boulay share about Brown Center.
Yeah, and then CSDA had the Brown Center come in, and again, it was doing, creating different programs where there was trust building and collaboration between the students. And in addition, we continued the grade level guidance lessons where the guidance counselor would rotate between the classes once a month, tying in with the various school-wide assembly themes.
And then I can speak for RMS, at least at RMS K through 3, we implemented daily morning meetings. And today was our responsive classroom training, Brookline, in the Brookline School District, which was really well done by those representatives. But I know at our building, our staff had a great time learning more about responsive classroom, what it looks like in the classroom. There was some good validation of what we're already doing well and some things that we took away that we can continue working on, such as closing circle. Our teachers learned about just different ways to create that sense of belongingness, building those connections that they already do with the students, all the main components of responsive classroom. And as Mrs. Boulay shared, both buildings did school-wide assemblies to reinforce the expectations of behavior, teamwork, respect, just to build that student character and learner work habits. So we're very proud of the work we did this year, of our staff. They did a tremendous job, and there's a lot of good work done here that we look to continue next year.
I just want to say thank you to the SEL team. I know a lot of work went into that, and that there's an internal team that's working on it, so I think we're making progress, which is great. And all of this is positive for the school. I saw the data on staff feelings about morning meeting and responsive classroom, and those were very high percentage of at least people that responded that are in favor of it, so that's good.
Yeah, and I can even speak to CSDA. I was on the training today, and several of the teachers who hadn't gone through a 4-day training program, we identified where they're located in Burlington, Mass, Concord, New Hampshire, in the times and dates, and many of them are like, I'm going to go for it, just to have that more, more training and validation and practice. And what I think a lot of them learned over the past year is the consistency, and it has to be the consistency. You're looking at the language, you're looking at the expectations, and the more consistent the staff is, then we're providing a collaborative process throughout the entire building. And so I think when we had discussions today, even they were saying, there was a particular teacher I met with yesterday for their year-end goals, and the teacher said to me, Trish, when you told me about what we were going to be doing, I wasn't buying into it. I just thought, oh, there's no way I can take that time away, 15 minutes a day, to have a morning meeting or do an activity, I said that the goal really is to have the students taking over those processes, having them take turns and give them a leadership role. And she said, Trish, for the past 2 months, the students have been leading it. They've been asking me if they can, lead the meeting and create the activity, and again, building that trust to be able to speak amongst their peers. So it is working.
That's great.
It is great.
Is there anything the board can do in terms of financial support for those teachers who want to attend the 4-day training?
They will actually be able to use professional development funds to support that training. So they should be all set. But if they're not,
Because I think that's wonderful, and I think when we were having conversations about, train the trainer versus being able to go through the whole process themselves, I really am so pleased to hear that, and I just don't want financial reimbursement or that to be a hindrance for teachers.
Right. Yeah, and it shouldn't be, because they'll start afresh on July 1st as far as their funding.
Awesome.
But the biggest thing is, we need to have the buy-in by the students, but more importantly, we need the buy-in from the teachers, and we're getting that.
Yeah.
They've
That's
seen
great.
the progress that we've made particularly at CSDA.
Yeah. Thank you for everyone who's been involved.
Oh, yes. So one of the highlights of the year, because we had such great progress made the previous years, that we wanted to be able to have a STEAM night at both of the schools. So this year we had the contraptions night. And you can see the individual here making a contraption. Little did I know that this individual was going to be popping a balloon, and I he did it right in front of me. I'm like, oh, what's happening? And it popped, and I screamed. So that's how that was how the night began. So it was wonderful. But we had a really great, again, another outpouring of support from the community, and the parents and community members and lots of grandparents were just thrilled to see the creativity of the students, and they had fun doing their building.
In RMS, we have what's called Reading Buddies. So our kindergarten students pair up with a second grade class, and our first grade students pair up with a third grade class. And it just allows them to have a role model, or also have the opportunity to be a leader to a younger student. So that's our model of what we use here. And what we did was we had those classroom partners work together on building leprechaun traps. They had a great time, but we were unsuccessful in catching the little guy. So, but we had a great night on March 14th. We had a large showing of families come out. The projects are great. They were really well thoughtful. They were very thoughtful projects, and they went through the whole engineering and design process. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
And our goal for kind of relates a lot to the second slide that we had about MTSS, multi-tiered systems of supports. Just to build upon the whole child, social, emotional, behavioral, and intellectual. We held MTSS district-wide. We had a district-wide process. We had weekly rotation meetings where grade level teachers met with the MTSS team to discuss each student, to provide either academic interventions or behavioral supports, or just supporting the teacher. And we had grade level data meetings. All teachers and the interventionists worked on data sheets. And then we also piloted Eureka Math Squared, which we're going to be using next year at RMS. And we also piloted illustrative K through 6, and we chose Eureka Math Squared.
And the next steps, we will be piloting, as we noted the grant that was received, CKLA for grades 4 through 6, as well as K through 3. And then you'll be having the Eureka Math implementation grades K through 3. Grades 4 through 6 will remain within Visions.
And I think one thing I just want to mention about MTSS, everybody did a great job of staying on schedule, adhering to the process, but what I've found from it is I see it as more of a personalized learning approach that we're doing here, because we're targeting all areas. So kudos to all of our staff for that.
Can I ask a question about the math to make sure I heard that correctly? So we're using Envisions in K to 3 and Eureka in 4 to 6, or the opposite?
Envisions is now leaving at our math. We're taking Eureka Squared.
Okay.
Eureka Math Squared,
okay.
but staying at CSDA for a year.
Okay. And eventually, if all goes well, the idea is that Eureka Math would be K to 6, or do the programs talk to each other? I don't get why. I might have missed something. I apologize, but yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So when we did the pilot for Eureka Squared and Illustrative, and we also looked at those two programs compared to Envisions, and the feedback from the 4 through 6 buildings in both Hollis and Brookline was that Envisions was a better fit at this time for the students in grades 4 through 6, and Eureka Squared was the best fit for grades K to 3. So for right now, we'll be doing Eureka Squared next year in K to 3, and continuing Envisions with the updated 2.0 new manuals and a little bit updated workbook and whatnot in grades 4 through 6. I think we have that for the next 4 years, I believe. But kind of keeping in the back of our minds that if we're finding better success with Eureka Squared, it also gives us a few years for our younger students to have that build background of Eureka Squared going into CSDA, so we're not dropping them into the deep end of the pool and saying, because a lot of the programs anticipate you having it K1, 2, 3, and it's hard to start that in grade 5. So that's kind of where we're at this point. So 2 different programs.
And it's been studied how if you do K to 3 Eureka Math Squared, and then you transition to Envisions for a student who's now, there's some students who are gone from Envisions, they're going to go to Eureka Math for a year or two, and then they're going to go back to Envisions. Have you studied that as the curriculum coordinator to make sure that all the topics that need to be covered are covered and all of that? I mean, I'm sure you have, but I just
Yes,
wanted
so
a
we've,
lot of-
myself and Ms. Dr. Diaz over in Hollis started looking at that kind of streamlining crosswalks between the two, but that's also going to be a lot of our summer work going into the fall as it goes fully deployed. So looking at, I mean, they're both based on the standards, so the standards should be same and aligned, but we'll be looking at how to kind of fill in if there's any gaps, which there will be because every program does things a little bit differently. So we'll be looking at that over the summer to see what next steps need to be put in place, especially for, say, those fourth graders who are going from one to the other
Right.
and switching schools at the same time. So that's on our docket.
And so the decision, though, on Envision staying in 4 to 6 was based on staff preference? Was it based on data, too, about? Is
It was
just a
based
preference?
on the feedback, majority from the feedback from the staff and what the programs were able to provide to them and to the students thus far in both Hollis and Brookline.
Okay.
They
All right,
actually
great.
piloted for a little.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. I just look forward to hearing more about it and making sure that it's all going smoothly. I know it,
Right. We want to keep that alignment going and
Yeah,
kind of
you
have it be a
definitely want that
smooth
alignment.
transition. Absolutely.
and not constant movement around. Not that I think there has been any constant movement. We've been in visions for a while, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely.
So at both RMS and CSDA, we do what's called Ames Web Plus testing. That's our benchmark progress monitoring program that we use throughout the year. And as you can see, these are our growth rates for K1, 2, and 3. The fall is listed in blue. The green is our spring data. And we made some nice progress throughout the year. All of our grade levels are at least 70% proficient or above. So some nice growth there.
The data looks really good in grade 1. That's good to see.
That was a nice jump.
Yeah.
And that's also a time where the students are taking off because they're getting really excited about the reading and
Mhm.
they spend a lot of time there. So our teachers at all the grade levels did a great job, but that was a great jump. We like
Yeah.
to see that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are good numbers.
Yeah. And just go in detail. So reading Ames Web, what it looks at is comprehension, reading fluency,
Silence.
vocabulary. Yeah.
And then the foundational skills.
The foundational skills.
CSDA, as you can see, there's we were pretty high as far as the number of students, average or above average, on the Ames Web reading, and they continue to have some growth between the fall and the spring.
Excellent. And at all of our grade levels, we're in that 80% proficient, mid 80s and above. All made great progress throughout the year. So.
Those first graders.
Is that-
Those first grade was first grade.
Yeah.
And at CSDA for the math, they all moved from the 80th percentile up to the 90s, and grade 6 was pretty high at 93, and they still moved up a percentage point.
Those numbers are really good to see how, as the kids get older, the numbers are even better. I assume all of our students take Ames Web, even students who are on IEPs? Okay, great, that's good.
Yes,
all,
that's-
all in the spring.
Yeah, unless
It's only a
unless
small handful
parents
of
opt out of them.
We have
Okay.
some students that do a wing 2 benchmark. They were, seeing the groups. That's
And
part
they-
one.
Yeah, all of our kids, all of the kids that went to benchmark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
RMS, yeah.
And the Ames Web screener is that first layer for the dyslexia screener. That's the state law now that we use in the fall.
Okay, good, thank you.
And the other thing that's wonderful about Ames Web is that we can break down the data so that teachers can really look at individuals' needs as far as where those foundational skills or skills that some gaps may be appearing, so they can really figure out exactly student by student at each of the trimesters.
Yeah. Thank you.
I see a large jump right between fall and winter is the biggest jump
Yes.
in scores.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
For the last
This
year,
year.
yes. What? Do you want me to talk about it?
Which one? Oh, sure, come on.
Oh,
Come
okay.
join us.
All right, fabulous, yeah.
Okay, so we actually, sorry, Dan. We actually just got updated SAS results for ELA. They were just published within the last few days. So what we have here is kind of longitudinal data for the grade levels and the cohorts. So you'll see how grade 3 performed each year, but then you can also follow the cohort as they go from grade 3 to grade 4 to grade 5 and grade 6. So for our reading data this year, grade 3, as you can see, is at grade 3 and 4 are at 51% proficient. Grade 5 is at 68, and grade 6 is at 79. I know what I noticed a lot as I was looking at this initially was the jump in the cohorts and how, you know, this purple cohort, which are our current 5th graders, were at only at the 41st percent. Only 41% of them were proficient last year, and now we're at 51%. Same with our current 5th graders, 55 to 68, and then 77 to 79% proficient in our reading. Questions on that? Can you light me up? Yeah.
And that came out on Monday, right?
Yeah, I feel like I looked at it, I think it was Monday. Yeah. Math, we're stronger in math on the SAS, so we're at 63%. Again, grades 3 and 4 are exactly the same percent proficient, same in reading. So 63% proficient in grades 3 and 4, 55% proficient in grade 5, and then 80% proficient in grade 6 in math. So we had a couple of classes where there weren't any kids who were not proficient in math in grade 6, which was really exciting to see. Again, I mean, look, the 6th grade cohort, the growth they made from last year to this year was just incredible. So kudos to the students and the teachers in the growth that they made this year.
How do you account for the drop among the 5th grade cohort? I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah, so we're starting, Mrs. Belay and I were looking at that actually. We have to dig down a little bit into the subtest and find out where the weakness is, especially with us not changing math programs. I want to make sure that whatever we're not addressing in the core is going to be addressed next year. So that's on my next step of digging down to those sub areas to see where we're struggling.
We also get,
Our overall scores also get affected by the number of students that opt out. This year, I have to say that we had a very high percentage of students, and they're from all levels. So that does affect our overall percentages as well.
And like Mrs. Peterson said, we just wanted to thank the teachers and the students. They all worked really hard to prep for the SAS. The students did a great job of taking their time, working through it, persevering. So thank you to them. Is there no one?
there's signs.
This one's not as fun because there's not as many colors to follow cohorts. Unfortunately, I like color coding things. So for science, grade 5 is the only one in our buildings that take the science SAS. So it's just kind of the history of where our children are in our science. So we're at 48% proficient in the science based on this year's current 5th graders. I was talking to Gina last week to kind of look at what are we going to do moving forward to kind of increase that proficiency standard and proficiency percentage. So we already have some PD planned for the fall on kind of reintroducing gizmos at CSDA, kind of having those on level interactive practice pieces, so they're more apt to know what to do when they're attacking those problems and things on the SAS itself. So that's a next step for next year.
Our next slide is going to cover our behaviors over the past 2 years. So at RMS this year, we had a total of 334 incidences of behavior. We have 249 that happened in the building, 85 on the bus. And some highlights I wanted to point out are we had a 20% decrease from last year in behavior. I think these next two are really key. 80% of our students in our building, which equates out to 269 out of 335, had 0 instances of behavior, which is really great. And then if you dig even deeper, I found that 90%, which is 302 of our students out of 335, had either 1 or fewer instances of a behavior. 55% of the bus incidents occurred on one of the 8 buses.
Wow.
And we also had a increase of 141% bus incidence rate this year, basically due to that.
Wow.
Then the mean and the median value of all the other buses is right around 5. And
Wow.
any questions for that?
What are we doing to
Yeah, that was-
address
That bus.
that bus?
Well, we can change the name of that bus next year to a different bus.
I know which bus
No,
it is.
it's a great question. So I'll tell you, we have a slide on that later
Okay.
of one thing we're going to do. Both Mrs. Boulay and Mrs. Peterson as well, we've worked at that bus. We've had meetings with that bus. The parents of that bus are aware of instances, but we always do progressive discipline. We start with a discussion with the student. We sometimes will do a conflict resolution or a role play scenario of what happened to try to help them with that situation. We move seats. We try to work with the bus driver. We watch bus videos. And then sometimes it results with a day off the bus, 2 days off the bus, 3 days off the bus. But
I think it's good to keep communicating that
Yeah.
because sometimes, and we all know this, what the kids see on that bus is just keeps on happening, you know. So I think it's good that parents are aware. I'm glad you're communicating that this is how we handle it, generally speaking. Obviously, with more serious incidents, you can jump in the progressive discipline from. But there's, that bus is infamous.
And I would say that the parents are great. When Mrs. Boulay and I did an alert to the families, they all responded to that and tried to support with it. And they're all great kids. And I would say the majority of them never get in trouble at school. It's the bus. It's an unstructured, it's one of those unstructured times of the day. But the key is we want to keep them safe to school and to home. And
I think certain bus drivers just have more finesse with handling, proactively handling the situations. And not to blame, and bus drivers are the most amazing people in the world. I could never do that job, but I think it's, not one with not a lot of training. And so, I guess it's unstructured time on the bus, but I'm glad we're addressing it so that it doesn't, because it could spill over eventually into outside, into sports, into all other areas, school.
Yeah, and I think we have to take all this data with a little grain of salt too, because it's all subjective too, and the tolerance of one, like you said, the tolerance of one bus driver is totally different than another one. This bus could have 19 instances of, moving out of their seat, whereas another bus driver might not have written that up. So, and some of these are very, very minor, and I would say the majority of them are minor. There's hardly many major incidents of the bus, but we just want to be as transparent as we can of what's been reported.
Thank you.
CSDA, like the teachers were saying today, the responsive classroom is working in the building. We've had a 71% decrease in building incidents based on the reports. And so we went from 105, and actually if you remove the bus incidents here, it'd be about 364. 82% of the students, which is 207 out of the 253 students, had 0 incidents of behavior reported. As far as bus behavior, for write-ups, we had 49 last year, and this year we have 89. So that was an 82% increase in bus behavior. And as Dan was saying, we've been really working with the families, with the students, but we've also been working with the bus company and the manager, and encouraging, if the bus driver doesn't, if a student or a parent doesn't report to us, the only other way we'll get the report is if the bus driver. I know it's more work for them, but ultimately we're helping everyone, and most importantly to keep everybody safe. And then 56% of the bus incidents occurred from my school on 3 out of the 8 buses. So we have that one bus, and I have 2 more. So, you're welcome.
Thank you.
But, you know, as Dan was saying, you know, we work with the parents, many times, you know, whether it's incidents in school or on the bus, having parents come in. We're having meetings, we're having guidance counselors involved, we're having school psychologists involved if necessary. Anything to help support the families and the child, and to let the child know that the parents are working collaboratively with us and beside us, and that, you know, consequences aren't just going to occur at school, but they're also occurring at home. All right, so basically, Mrs. Peterson, thank you, sent out the survey for us for SEL, for the responsive classroom. And basically, for this one, it was, have you observed any positive changes in student behavior or classroom dynamics with the implementation of responsive classroom morning meeting? And we compared it between January and June. Unfortunately, we only had 18 responses compared to 30 in January. But as you can see, the majority still, at least at 61%, are saying yes. And again, that's between the two schools, and you know, the conversations when I was in the training today, the responses were positive, and they seemed idealistic as far as what can the work that we can continue to do.
Our next slide is, which, if any, of the currently used programs and strategies would you like to continue using next school year? And the choices were responsive classroom, a high rate in the 90 range, Turbo Tiger, classroom-based guidance lessons, school-wide assemblies, and none of the above. Like Mrs. Boulay shared, the responsive classroom morning meeting is going well, but today's training is going to only enhance that because of what they learned today, and all of our teachers are trained, so I expect that to be high. Our guidance counselors did a wonderful job this year of visiting classrooms, and you know, at least in our building, our guidance counselor got into every classroom at least 8 or so times to do different units, and talk about feelings and how to work as a team and be cooperative, and then we try to hold as many school-wide assemblies as we can to reinforce our MTSS school-wide expectations. So I think we made some positive gains as a school district. And Turbo Tiger was more of just a placeholder this year. The videos were really well received. What we found with Tiger were the lesson plans that we were going to implement midway through the year. They were just too cumbersome, not enough resources with it, and they were kind of incomplete in a lot of respects. So, but the videos were great. So we want to thank Plymouth State for their Tiger performances and their offerings. Next steps and considerations. So we are going to implement responsive classroom in all classrooms, K through 6. We are going to look at ways we can further partner with families by having teachers share with their families the themes that they're talking about in the classroom at morning meetings, so that they can also reinforce it at home too, so we can further close that gap with the homeschool partnership, although it's pretty close as it is. MTSS committee will develop and implement bus posters to be on all buses. We're looking at maybe doing that, and with like a face and like a zipper. Share monthly Tiger themes in the newsletter and continue bus safety presentations that we always do in the beginning of the year. But no.
No, just going to add on to that. Again, you know, the implementation of responsive classroom, it's not just the morning meetings. It's also the language, the expectations. And I think one of the things that the instructor reinforced today, which was what the teachers needed to hear, is that you have to be consistent. You can't do, you know, you have to do it with fidelity. And if we're all doing it with fidelity throughout the building, through each of the buildings, then we will see that progress.
Predictable routines.
Exactly.
So, to answer your question, Kelly, you asked about the school, how you guys can help. Well, this is These are our budget focus areas for next year.
Okay.
So we're looking at a guaranteed sub, one per school counselor to support MTSSB at both buildings. It would be shared to support that. MTSSB interventionists, 2 per school, lunch recess monitors, 1 per school, and a STEAM teacher, a shared position for specialists. So
What is the MTSSB interventionist? What is that?
Oh, the MTSSB interventionist. That's a great question. So that would be an interventionist who would work with our MTSS team when we have our weekly meetings. And say, for instance, a teacher comes in and says, I've got this student, they're disruptive in class, they're not getting this classwork done, they need the support. We can look at creating a plan to support that student in the classroom, where the MTSS interventionists will say, okay, it's always at math, end of math, I'm going to go sit in the classroom, try to support, see what we can do with that plan. It will be more targeted per student.
What would their what would the qualifications be of that person? Is it like a paraprofessional? Is it a counselor?
Well, we also have to craft that position, but
Okay.
I would say we're looking at teacher-like skills, right, that can work with students. It could be a paraprofessional, but we've got to work with the team to determine what that looks like. These are just some initial ideas of what we're looking at.
Can I jump in on
Sure.
that for a
Yeah,
second?
I'm
So
confused.
different districts have handled these types of positions in different ways. It could be a teacher, an educator, it could be a school counselor. There's trainings at the state level for MTSSB, and so whatever we would kind of want to look at for our tier 2 type interventions, both pull out and pushing, we can look at what those trainings are and then kind of craft, like Dan said, what qualifications we want for our district. But I've seen districts use professional certified educators and paraprofessionals and certified paraprofessionals with the appropriate trainings that are offered.
Okay. And this will, I'm sure it'll be talked about in the budget.
Yes.
That's just a newer model that I've never,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yes.
not familiar with that, and it seems like, I just would want to know that the tier 1, the teachers and all of that are fully equipped to handle the behavior in the classroom before we start. Yeah, so, okay, but we want to support whatever the team feels they need and is clear, so that's good. And we talked about lunch and recess monitors. It sounds like that's also added.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I appreciate the data.
Thank you.
All right. So I am going to open public input at 7:18 p.m. and I'll run to 7:40. Is there any public input at this time?
Hello. Sorry, I'm not used to talking to a mic. My name is Melissa Davis, and I live on Wildwood Drive here in Brookline, New Hampshire. For nearly 2 decades, I have had the privilege of serving as an educator, both within this very district and beyond. I can speak to being both a parent and a citizen here of Brookline, as well as a former employee at CSDA of SAU 41. I am here to discuss with you today about the impact that care and support have on our culture, and to offer some solutions to the most pressing issue that we face, the loss of many of our finest teachers. I moved to Brookline in 2020, specifically for the school system and to ensure that my own children have the best education that they could possibly have. My son, who just finished 2nd grade at RMMS, has had just that. Camden feels loved, cared for, and overall has had some of the best teachers that I've ever had the privilege of meeting. This year, my son Camden had a medical emergency at school, and before the end of the day, his teacher called me to check up on him and his well-being. By the time the buses left that afternoon, the school nurse had sent me an email checking in on him and asking if she could help him when he returned to school. And at 8:23 p.m. that night, I had an email from Mr. Molinari asking how he was doing and if we needed anything as a family. Why you were sending emails at 8:23, I'm not sure, but thank you. This showed just how much they cared for my son. It showed how valued he is. When I mentioned to my son about the kind messages that he had received, he looked at me and said, and I quote, "Mommy, they really love me there." That not only melted my heart as a mom, but made me extremely grateful for the school community that we have here in Brookline. However, after hearing the list of resignations last month, I felt compelled to speak tonight about the culture in this school district that's causing so many teachers to leave. We lost 4 teachers in that May meeting alone, 2 of whom have tenure in this district and are who I would consider masters of their craft. After reading Jessica Kutu's resignation, one school board member remarked, "It is hard that a young teacher can't visualize themselves as being a good wife, mother, and teacher at the same time, and I've never had anything resonate so much." I know that I myself left the classroom due to the fact that I did not feel adequately supported here, and I did not feel that I could do all 3 things well. When I worked for the district, I had multiple experiences that contributed to my own mental health decline. When I was threatened online by a parent in which he stated he would come to school and use his alternative education and his fists to deal with the situation, and I felt unsafe at work and at home, no one from administration came to check on me. The following day, after receiving that threat, a man came to the CSDA playground wearing camo and carrying a black cell phone in his hands. Fortunately for us, he was just a gentleman looking for the walking trails near the school. This incident, however, triggered a variety of strong emotions in myself and others, as I was still reeling off of just receiving a threat from the day before. No one from administration came to check on me. When I was bombarded by over 200 emails over a 6-month time period from one parent who was cruel and harassing in nature, and I sat in a meeting with multiple administrators telling them I couldn't take anymore, no one from administration followed up after that meeting to check on me. When I had my own medical emergency and I was out due to getting a concussion from work from a rogue soccer ball on the playground, no one from administration checked on me. I'm happy and grateful to say that my son's experience is very different than my own. But I think that this illustrates the importance of how just one check-in can make someone feel valued, supported, and cared for. Now, I understand that this is my experience, my feelings, and my interpretation of events. So besides talking about my experience here, I have always felt that data and numbers can tell a story, because there's no gray area with numbers. Last year, CSDA lost 4 classroom teachers. With only 12 classroom teachers in the building, that is 1/3 of the classroom teaching staff that left. 3 of those teachers were tenured. This year, 2 classroom teachers are not returning to CSDA. This means that in the past 2 school years, half of the classroom teaching staff has left CSDA. That does not factor in the loss of numerous support staff members such as paraprofessionals, special education staff, or specials teachers. Earlier this month, I was provided with a number of professional staff from the district that have left RMMS and CSDA, which are Brookline's lower and upper elementary schools, and compared that to the number of professional staff members who have left HBS Hughes, which are the lower and upper elementary schools of Hollis. During the 2022-2023 school year, a total of 8 professional staff members left Brookline, while only 2 professional staff members left Hollis. As of May 30th, 2024, 7 professional staff members had left Brookline, while only 2 have left Hollis. This means that over the past 2 school years, Brookline has lost 15 professional staff members, while Hollis has only lost 4. These numbers do not include any of the resignations that were announced this evening. Based on this information, there is quite a large discrepancy between the turnover rates of Hollis and Brookline. The board, as well as the administration, should be diving deeper into this question, asking questions. What are the differences between here and Hollis? What are they doing that we're not? How can administration from Hollis help support administration here? How are they supporting their teachers in ways that we might not be? How is the district supporting Hollis in ways that Brookline is not being supported, and why? More questions need to be asked, and the numbers need to be looked at. We are losing excellent staff members. Therefore, steps should be taken to address teacher retention here in Brookline. Before a teacher hands in their resignation, The administration should be asking questions. Questions like, how far into this decision are you? Is there something that we can do to change your mind? How can we help support you? The district should be doing more and trying to keep the fantastic staff that we have. Although both of these areas deserve questions to be asked, just asking questions is not enough. Information should be provided to the staff on the steps that the district's going to take to address this issue, to ensure that we're supporting teachers in the right way, to ensure that teachers' voices are being heard. I am concerned for the future of education, especially the education here in Brookline. I urge the board and the administration to listen to your staff. Instead of trying new curriculums for math and reading, find out what they need support in and give it to them. Provide them with professional developments that help support their areas of need, their areas of concern. Instead of being concerned about test scores, we should be concerned about the mental health and well-being of our teachers. The staff here are absolutely amazing. They are extremely knowledgeable, caring, kind, hardworking, and we need to support them to ensure that turnover like this does not continue to happen. If we can find that balance and help support the teachers, we won't need a new fancy packaged program. The numbers that I've provided, and based on the concerns that teachers have brought up in their resignation letters, shows that the teachers in Brookline are not okay. They need help, they need support, and they're looking towards administration and the board for that. They need empathy, kindness, compassion, and to be shown that they are valued by administration just as much as our students are. Whenever I've come across a problem, no matter what that problem is, I am always one that feels that if solutions are not provided, it is just merely a complaint. Some ways that this problem could be addressed is by having the school board meet with staff members leaving as an optional exit interview, in which administration is not present. That way, staff members can feel as though they can be open and honest without the possible threat of retribution. I also urge the administration to have an entrance ticket at each staff meeting, where teachers can mention how they're feeling, what they need help with, their stress levels, and that administration knows their staff's mental health load, who they should be checking in on, and identifying areas that they can assist with. An example of this might include, on a scale of 1 to 5, how high is your stress level at work? Is there anything that you would like to share with the administration about your stress level? Is there anything that administration can do to support you? As a teacher, I used to send out a Feel Good Friday email to staff members around the building every Friday, stating something wonderful that I saw them do, and urging them to send out a compliment as well to another staff member. The feedback that I got from that was extremely overwhelming. I had many staff members state that it made them cry, knowing that someone saw a little thing that they did that no one else noticed. I know that receiving something like this from an administrator would be even more meaningful and shows staff members that they are seen and that they are valued, almost like a Blue Jay Award for staff members. There are many small things that can be done that have a large impact on staff members' mental health and well-being. The nation is going through a teacher shortage, and it's on administration and the board to do what we can to ensure that Brookline is not going to be a part of that. We need to keep the teachers we have, and we need to do what we can to retain them. It is because of the teachers here that Hollis Brookline have been so successful, and it will continue to be because of the teachers here that we continue to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melissa, I just wanted to say thank you very much, and I'm wondering if you can, if this is appropriate, email a copy of your written statement with the recommendations so that we can include it in our minutes and have the action items that you suggested to review.
I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some comments too, but I want to see if there's other public input on the same topic or any other input. And then I think, I don't know if that's, Allison, I didn't want to stop you from your comment, but.
You're okay.
Okay.
Hi. I've never done this before, so
My name is Cindy Elrick. I have lived in Brookline for 33 years. I raised my children here. They all went to Brookline and Hollis schools, 3 of them. I'm a 23-year employee of the district. And I will tell you, I've been through a lot of principals, a lot of special ed coordinators. I have never, ever felt unsupported by Trish Boulay or Dan Molinari, ever. In January of 2021, my parents both caught COVID and were hospitalized together, and within 2 weeks, we lost both my parents. We were not allowed to be with them. I was Zooming from work with my parents and with medical staff every single day. Trish checked on me every single day, offered support every single day. And when they died, again, I felt incredibly supported. I also have a son who is physically disabled, who has a range of medical conditions, who has been in and out of the hospital, especially lately, with some very serious issues. And again, I have always felt very supported by Trish. Dan, I don't think I ever told you about this, but I know Dan's always asking me about my kids. So I just have to say, my experience in 23 years, I always felt supported by other principals, but I'm just talking about Trish and the last 4 years of my experience with her. And I guess I have to wonder why a whole year went by before you would address this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there other public input? Okay.
Okay, so I did not plan on speaking this evening, but I don't think that.
Can you tell us your name
Oh, okay,
and
sorry.
address?
I'm Heather Reardon, and I am a Brookline resident. And part of school, I have 3 daughters. Actually, might as well brag about them. Hollis Brookline High School. I've got one in the middle school, and now one at RMMS. And I think I'm just gonna say that I don't think that this should be. I think we're just bringing facts here today, right? We've worked with these in both of these schools, but you know, I would say that there's some data here that we have to focus on and maybe try to take like some of the emotion out. I mean, again, everybody, I think we mentioned it could be very subjective, but I think it would be good just to take a moment to kind of revisit, you know, why are we seeing such a overturn? You know, we came from Nashua. We just moved here 3 years ago, and had been in the Nashua School District and didn't experience that type of, you know, turnover either. So I think we just need to focus on the facts. Let's look at the data, see what it tells us, and I think we can all agree that over like the last 4 years, there has been, I think overall, in general, a lack of support for teachers and administrators, right? And so I think we need to take a minute to step back and see what we can do to help everyone feel better supported. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public input? And we can have a discussion now. I think we've been talking about teacher retention for a while, and it's been a concern of the boards, and I can only speak for the board, so I do think that's something that we want to look into. And I agree, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Was it Bethany? The woman in the greens.
Oh, Heather.
Heather, I'm sorry, I just made that up. I don't even know where that came from. Wow. Okay, Heather, Bethany.
Is her name.
I am Bethany.
Oh, okay. That's really weird. I don't know.
That is strange.
But I agree with Heather. Sometimes this becomes personal, and I don't think it needs to be. I think we can look at data and know that there are teachers who are struggling here, and I think it's worth continuing to look at. We had talked about that a few years ago, and then I think the board saw what we perceived as a potential improvement and stabilization in numbers of teachers leaving. And I do think it's best done by an outside person. It really should not be the board. That's not our role in many ways. But there are, in districts that I've worked in, we just went through one recently, you can have an outside consultant come in, not an attorney. I know at one point we had talked about that, but to really look at the systems in place. So what systems are missing? Why are teachers, if teachers are not feeling supported, why are they not feeling supported? If administrators are not feeling supported, why are they not feeling supported? I love the suggestions that you had, Melissa. Some of them seem just like that personal connection, but we really want to get a global overview of what's happening and how we can improve it, because we do value our teachers. They are vital to our students' success, and we value them just because they're people, and we want them to feel supported. So I don't think the board has enough information to decide what is going on, but I think there's enough data to continue to look at that. And I would suggest maybe at our July meeting that we talk about this type of outside consultant that can come in. They spend usually about 2 days looking at just interviewing teachers, interviewing staff, interviewing administrators. And when you have somebody from the outside who doesn't have that emotion and that involvement and can take away the whole personal aspect, which usually has nothing to do with personality or a personal thing, and really look at the systems and come up with some suggestions. I had recommended that a few years ago, and I think we started to feel better, but I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can for our staff to feel supported, both physically and mentally, by the community. And I want our administrators to feel the same. And I want it to be, we want it to be a supportive environment where everybody collaborates and communicates, and without assigning blame.
Yeah, so I think I'm hearing kind of two things going on here. The first is a concern for teacher turnover, which the board, we've talked about, we are aware of it, and I believe in some of our earlier conversations surrounding it, one of the questions we asked, is there a trend as to the reasons, as to the why for the resignations? And it seemed to be kind of all over the place. It didn't seem, from our conversation then, to be a singular kind of commonality as to why. Yes, some of the reasons, like last month for resignation, like hit home with us as well. And so I think that brings us to the second part of what systems do we have in place to support our teachers. We've spent a lot of time. I know year 2 of being on the board maybe, but I know a lot of our focus has been on the mental health of our students, and it is not an excuse that Rome wasn't built in a day, but I do think that we've got a better handle on making sure the supports for our students are there, and it is something that we need to bring to the forefront to ensure that the support for the teachers and our administration is there as well. And I love all of your suggestions, and I'm looking forward to being able to kind of read those, and we can take them and grow from them as well. I do think when we talk about this, I think we maybe can revisit maybe some of the reasons for resignations. I mean, because yes, it is a problem on a grander scale at the moment, but if we see trends in some of these resignations, I think maybe then we can take more pinpointed action to ensure that those supports to help with our teacher retention get put into place. And as well, on the flip side, I think it's really important that we also focus on our administrators. Everybody looks to our administrators to fix everything and to support everything, when we need to make sure, especially as a board, that we are supporting them too. So I think we've got multiple areas here as a board that we really need to kind of pinpoint and focus in. And I thank everybody for their input and their feedback. And we hear you.
And I guess for me, I just want to say that having had children go through RMMS and CSDA, and CSDA had a very special part in my family's history here in Brookline. And so last month's resignations, one of them specifically, really hit me hard, and I got emotional about it. And I think that we have sort of globally been talking about, teachers leaving the profession post-COVID, and so I'm glad that we didn't look at 21, 22 numbers, because I think we saw a lot of exodus in that immediate post-COVID period. However, when I think about sort of the global reasons why teachers are leaving the profession, or why we can't hire paraeducators, or why we can't keep paraeducators, which I know is really a regional, if not national problem. My wife works in like one of the best districts in Massachusetts. They can't keep paraeducators or ABA techs, and that's, certainly compounds the difficulties that teachers face in the classroom when they don't have that dedicated support for students who really require it. So I guess, as a board and as a person, operating under the understanding that there are sort of, I don't want to say global, but nationwide sort of like, big picture issues with the teacher profession. But this is the first time I've heard a comparison of grade level between our two districts. And so for me, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Shame on us for not having that in our view already. But for me, that tells me that it's not just there's an issue with teaching across the country and regionally. There's an issue with teaching in Brookline. If we're not seeing the same thing, granted, the teaching contract might be a little bit different in Hollis. The tuitioning in your kids might be a little bit cheaper in Hollis than it is in Brookline, but that doesn't account for that discrepancy in folks leaving. And so I really agree with Colleen that, I think we've tried to do some
Surveys.
some surveys, do some culture checks and, climate surveys. And I think that gave us some information, but not a ton. And I do think that it would be good to bring in, educational consultants who are accustomed to looking at systems and looking at patterns and interviewing people in a non-biased way and providing a report that gives us the information without giving us the emotional ties to the information. And so I look forward to talking about this more in July. And I really thank, Cindy for coming forward also. I think it's not about personalities, and I do think we all feel supported in different ways. And I'm glad that you have felt supported, because you're a treasure to our district. So I think it is important that we take a step back and not attach personalities or emotionality to it, but really look at it.
Well, and you just said something really important. We all feel supported in different ways. So just like we do for our kids, we need to ensure that we're differentiating that support for our adults in the district.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really important point of focus that we as a group need to ensure that we're being mindful of that,
Yeah.
right?
And I just want to say too, it's not an either or approach, so we don't have to be supporting kids and not supporting parents or not supporting teachers, and we don't have to say let's not focus on curriculum and scores, because those are important. All of this is part of a healthy school district, how teachers feel, how they feel supported, how administrators feel, how our students feel. It all, that's the baseline for school improvement, so that would naturally come. But I thank everybody for their input. It's appreciated. Come on up.
Sorry, just wanted to ask a point of clarification. Ryan Davis, Brookline resident. So, we talked about some of the reasons why teachers are leaving the profession as a whole, and we have, the teachers who've, given their notice here in the district. I'm curious if the resignation letters that are, provided by those teachers, by those professional staff, are made available to the board, to the public, by way of the notes that are read here in a completely unredacted form, or are they partially censored in any way? Because I think hearing the teacher's words matters in their entirety, and sometimes when a letter is only read in part, or in maybe something that may not paint the district in a favorable light, we're not getting the whole picture as citizens. And so I would just ask the board and administration, is that happening, or are we getting partially redacted letters?
There are times where you get partially redacted letters because, based on legal input, it is a letter that goes into the minutes of the meeting, and we are not intended to read inaccurate statements.
Okay.
One person's feelings, because again, you're a legal entity,
Sure.
and many times I send them off to legal counsel,
Okay.
and that's the recommendation. It has actually become a topic across New Hampshire because the profession has started to use letters of resignation as a way to express their opinions.
Sure.
Whereas traditionally it would have been, I'm Andy Corey, I'm retiring June of next year, thank you very much, blah, 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 and that. Now it's become a different piece. So there is a movement to go to what is called a consent agenda, where the names would just be listed and those would not be read any longer because of the concerns that legal counsel have with some of the statements that are being put into letters that have never been brought to the attention of administration.
Sure.
So I mean, I do my best because I'm the one who does the redaction, so I take full responsibility. A couple of years ago, there was a wonderful 2-minute meme of me out there because I hadn't read a whole letter. But there are certain things that legal has advised me to be very careful of because we are also protecting the board and the taxpayers in the potential instance of a lawsuit.
I fully appreciate that, and I 100% don't want the district to end up in another lawsuit. The town of Brookline already is doing okay with that. The question that I would have to the board, right, is what avenue are we providing the teachers to give that input, especially when they feel they have no other choice but to leave, right?
Well,
and whether it's leave their, sorry, apologies.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Leave the profession, leave the district, whatever that may be, right? I want to make sure that we're getting the uncensored version, whether that's made available for public comment or public consumption. It's a completely understandable point, but I think we need to make sure that is happening.
I wonder if we could see the unredacted portion in a non-public because it involves reputation potentially. But I mean, that's something that we could check with legal counsel. But I really want to emphasize at that point, it's too late. We want to start improving things from the beginning. We want people to not be writing these letters because they feel supported and because they want to stay. So really at that point, a letter of somebody who's already made the decision to leave our district, and it's not that it's not important. It's very important, and it gives us information. But we would like to focus on the proactive measures at that point.
100%.
And quite frankly, when I started, there was a situation where there was a lot of emotion at a meeting, and the facts were not at all connected to the emotion. I'm not saying that, but that can happen, and that could have put the district, the board, everybody in a very untenable situation. It involved sort of going after people from up. And again, I'm not even going to get into it because that's already stepping over that line. Sure. But we have to be really careful. So how can we make teachers feel that they don't have to come to us? because we have a very defined role. It's
Sure.
not that we wouldn't want to. We're all human beings. We want to know how you're doing, if you need support and all that, but it's really not our job. It's the administration's job, and it's our job to support the administration and through our process support teachers. So I think there was a lot at the beginning, and we were all new board members at one point, and so we were having lots of side conversations without realizing that that takes away from the people that they really should be talking to and feel comfortable with.
The problem is when there's a chain of command, right? And you have fear of retribution, or they're not going to give you a recommendation for your next job or something like that. It's really scary,
it's difficult.
right? Because you don't necessarily want to give that feedback to the person that is going to be making the recommendation for if you go to teach someplace else or something like that. So there's got to be, whether it's an anonymous way, there's got to be a way to have that feedback without fear of repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, and we can think about that, but again, we now have more administrators than we had before. I would encourage teachers to find somebody you're comfortable with, and if there isn't anybody, that's a problem. But it's not just we have Meg now, we have our new special ed. John, sorry, I should know his name, but we have multiple people that they can go to. And again, different people need different types of support, but I think everybody is well-intentioned here, but we have some systems issues that need to be addressed. So my hope is that we don't even have to really think about how does the board find out about resignations, because we want to be able to make people feel comfortable. I will say that I know a lot of people were moving. There were several resignations where people moved. Down to Boston was one of our, Shannon, who we all miss. So there's various reasons, and some of them were a few of them were people not feeling comfortable. And we want to make sure everybody's supported. We want to make sure our classrooms are running smoothly, that our kids are supported. We want to make sure that teachers feel comfortable handling behaviors in their own classroom to the extent they can. We want to make sure that and this is where the systems issue can come in, we want to make sure that all of our students feel included too, even our ones that are the most difficult, that come to us not in an easy way, seeking attention. So I think it's important, especially when you have a lot of new teachers, that we're figuring out where are things missing and how can we fill in those gaps. So we hear you, and we want to have a look at what is going on and how can we continue to improve. That's really our role, and we can suggest things to administration in that regard, but we're not decision makers. We're not administrators, even though some of us have that background. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other input, I'm going to close public input. Is there any other input? I want to give everybody a chance. No? Okay. At 7:53 p.m. Thank you, everybody. All right, so the next section is deliberation. Do we want to talk about the superintendent's recommendation to increase the hourly rate?
Yes, as the board is aware, our school district secretary has requested an increase to $25 per hour. This will be basically a $2 raise, but she hasn't had a raise in 3 years. As you know, she does an exceptional job across the SAU, and this recommendation was already approved by the SAU board and by the Hollis School District, and it is being read tonight at the co-op as well, and here. So I'll take any questions you may have, but I think we all know what an outstanding job Dawn does.
So I think, and we've talked about this previously,
Yes,
so
we
far
talked
good.
about
I'll
it
make a
before.
motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to increase the recording secretary's hourly rate to $25. Is there a second?
I second that.
And all in favor?
Thank you very much.
And then, do you want me to move forward with I think you talked about the suicide prevention plan. So
Yep.
I will make a motion to approve the amendments made to the suicide prevention plan as part of the 2024 biennial review conducted in accordance with policy JLDBB, suicide prevention and response. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Can we have discussion?
Oh, yeah, we can have a
Oh,
discussion.
yeah.
Oh, my God,
Sure,
sorry.
I agree with that. I'm good to go.
I'm looking through it. Well, for me, when we have the presentation, I sometimes,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely discuss.
I guess I just wish that member,
John.
Shriver Halligan, was here. Just, I feel like,
Can we postpone that? Is that?
You could postpone it. Ideally, we'd like it approved before the start of the school year. So if you want to look at it in July or in August, you can do that because those will both be prior to the start of the school year. But we, as a district opening days, we review this plan with the staff, so we really would need it in place by opening days.
Can we reopen this? Like, if we were to approve it tonight, can we, just in case we can't find a July meeting, right? So here's what I'm hearing. You need this in place for the school year.
Ideally,
This-
yeah. I mean,
we-
we do have a plan.
No.
We do have the old plan.
No,
we
but
would
you'd like
ideally
this
to
new one
update
in
it,
place
yes.
before the school year. So that's what I'm hearing. I also know that July is tough, right? This was sent out in advance, so we've seen this. I agree. I wish she was here.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to hold up. I don't want to have
That's
any
true.
potential hold up with what you would like to do to have this in place. So if we were to put this in place tonight, could we put it on our next meeting to reopen discussion or
Always.
amendments?
Yes.
Okay.
That way, you're good to go.
Yeah.
They can move forward. We can still revisit. Is that a fair compromise?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
really good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so with that, all in favor of the current amendments? 3-0. Thank
Perfect.
you.
All right, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next time.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is to see what action the board will take regarding the state literacy grant award. So I'll make a motion to approve the acceptance and expenditure of state literacy grant funds in the amount of $42,519.87 for the Richard Mahikian Memorial School and $23,223.10 for the Captain Samuel Douglas Academy. Is there a second?
I'll second
Discussion? No discussion.
No, it's thank you always.
Yeah,
thank
we're-
you.
Thank
As
you,
always,
thank you.
thank you for working to get grants for our district.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Appreciate
that's
it.
great. All right, all in favor? That is 3-0. Okay, and then to see what action the board will take regarding the Brookline School District Maintenance Expendable Trust. So I'll make a motion to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $112,000 from the Brookline School District Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund for the purchase of the maintenance items identified during the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
No, I think this is a formality. Like, the voters voted on this. This was what was
It is,
presented
yeah.
to them, and I'm glad that we have a transparent process for this.
All right,
Second.
all in favor? There you go. 3-0. Okay. Oh, yeah. Can I actually use yours because that's been a while? All right. So the next item is to see what action the board will take regarding the business administrator's recommendation to transfer up to $140,000 from the Special Education Trust to keep the reserve fund balance whole. So I will make a motion to transfer to approve the transfer of $140,000 from the Special Education Trust Fund in order to keep the fund reserve whole. Any discussion on that? Or a second, first of all?
I can second that.
Second?
It's fine, so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'm a smidge confused, just because I'm not sure, like, if we have a negative balance related to special education, I guess I don't understand why we have to transfer that from the special education fund balance into the unreserved fund balance. Like, why can't we use it from the special education trust fund to pay that?
That's what we'd be doing, you're correct.
Okay.
So we'd be using the special ed trust to pay FY24 expenses, the 23-24 school year. But when we pay those, that will increase the balance at the end of the year for FY24, and that money then falls down to the unreserved fund balance.
Okay.
Okay?
Those are all obvious question, but I want to make sure
Yep.
for transparency, all special education
Correct.
related costs, okay.
Correct.
as defined.
And again, it's up to the 140. As I said, we have a long way to go. I know it seems like, students are out, but from an accounting standpoint, you typically will be closing the books probably around August, even though we've already opened the new round.
So right now, we're currently at negative 75, 179
No.
for special
Currently-
education.
Oh. Yes, I'm sorry, in special education. There's that piece, and then there's most of the transportation overage as well,
Okay.
okay? And I'm gonna answer your question before we leave on the other piece too. so that
Okay.
we get-
Okay. Oh, so the $60,211
Right,
is transportation overages related to special education?
right,
Okay. It's just in a different.
because it's transportation.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Perfect.
No
Got it.
problem.
No, it's good to
Understand.
understand it. No, that was helpful for me too. I'm glad
I was
you- 'cause
like, where did that number
I
come
couldn't
from?
formulate a question. You did a good job. All right, so all in favor?
Excellent. And that finishes that. If the board is okay, I'll just go back to Kelly's earlier question, because
Yes.
it did come back to me.
Okay.
If you go back to the revenue sheet, Kelly, you had asked about the 59,529.
Yes.
That's made up of food service from the state of 5891. So at the very top, up at the state,
Yep.
it's food service from the federal of 6,024,
Yep.
and then it's local of 47,613. Those three numbers added
Okay.
up give me the 59,528.
Okay, great. I did not
And thank you for your patience, because
see this.
It took me a minute to get my brain back in gear.
I saw the state and didn't see the federal, and so I was adding those two to the 47,613 and not getting 59.
Not a problem.
Great, yeah, and just if you can follow up with Kelly about how to frame that,
Yes.
so it's not an
Yep,
unreserved fund
I have-
balance.
Exactly.
Awesome, great.
And I don't have, I need to go non-public.
Do we? No?
I don't have anything. I don't have
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I have a
So
grad
motion to
party.
adjourn.
A grad
Okay.
party on Saturday.
So I will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Thank you all.
Thank you everyone for
And
coming.
I will
Thank you,
send
guys.
an email.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I will not second that emotion.